et vous pourrez bénéficier de l'interprétariat.
Then you could reach interpretation.
Thank you very much. So we'll get the interpretation. I think essentially, whereas all our speakers are Anglophones, so I think it's going to be really much going into French most of the time. Got 34 participants. What do you think, Charles? Should we wait another minute or should we just get started? I think we can start with proceedings. And this gives us more time to talk because we always press for time otherwise. Okay, so welcome everyone to the fourth series of the Healthy Soil, Healthy Food webinars. This is webinar number 4. And we are going to be talking about managing farmer-centered on-farm trials to promote agroecological practices. I want to thank all those who have joined for now. We will be starting. I hope everybody's okay with language. Please shout in the chat if there's any issue with the interpretation, but you should be set by going to the interpretation tab and clicking on the language that you wish to have the conversation in. I'm going to ask, with no further ado, to ask Charles to please briefly introduce AFSA. I think many people know AFSA, but we've kind of had this little ritual of briefly reintroducing the host organizations of this webinar series, AFSA and Sky, just for those who don't know about them. Over to you, Charles.
Thanks very much. My name is Charles. I'm the Healthy Soil Food Officer. I work for AFSA. AFSA is in full Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, launched in 2011. It's an alliance of civil society actors who are advocating for food sovereignty, who are advocating for agroecology in Africa. Africa is made up of networks. So far, we have close to 40 member networks across 50 of the 54 African countries. And AFSA promotes African-led solutions, bringing in traditional wisdom, traditional knowledge, merging that with natural resource control. So AFSA champions agroecology for climate action, agroecology for farmer managed systems, agroecology for land rights and healthy soils, but also agroecology for nutritional diversity and agrobiodiversity. So if you need to know a little more about AFSA, I will put this website link in the chat so you can follow and know a little more about what AFSA is. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Charles. And I just want to extend a word of apology from Stephanie Aubin, who normally represents the Seed and Knowledge initiative in this webinar series. Steph is being held up with high-level discussions on the Seed Treaty in Rome at the moment, so I will, on her behalf, briefly introduce the Seed and Knowledge Initiative, also known as SKY. So SKY is a regional partnership of 15 diverse organizations which came together in 2014 to promote farmer-led systems in the context of agroecology and food sovereignty, with a focus on the whole of Southern Africa. They work at the grassroots level, supporting farmers at the national, regional, and global levels doing advocacy. Since 2020, they've been collaborating with AFSA to jointly design and implement this very same Healthy Soil and Healthy Food initiative that the webinar series is linked to. 6 Sky partners are hosting an HSHF center. These are CFHC in Malawi, KATC in Zambia, Proetsuro and CDAT in Zimbabwe, and BioWatch in South Africa. These 6 Sky partners are leading the HSHF movement in the Sky partnership in the Southern African region. Okay, so the role of Sky, basically the regional team is providing them with regional support. I will also be dropping the website link so that in the Q&A, in the chat box, so that people know a bit more about Sky if you wish to go there. Myself, I think you know me now. I am Sasha Lagrange-Mens. I'm your moderator for this series. I've been honored to be asked by AFSA and Sky to drive us through this exciting journey of basically learning from the farm upwards what are the right agroecological practices, the practices that work, that are farmer relevant, and that can be now escalated and taken up by more farmers across Africa. And it all has to do with healthy soils leading to healthy food. So today, this session is very much to the point, because it is about how do we manage farmer-centered on-farm trials to promote agroecological practices. So the background and the reason why this session came together is because in recent years, there's been a growing recognition of the crucial role farmers play in agricultural research and development. That traditional research methods often overlook the practical challenges that are that farmers face, and it leads to solutions that are perhaps less effective in real-world conditions, or not adequately, meeting the needs of the farmers. So to bridge this gap, there are methodologies known as participatory action research, or farmer field schools, also farmer research network approaches that have emerged as a key methodology for agroecology farmers. These actively involve farmers in the entire research process, from planning to implementation and analysis, ensuring that the solutions developed are both practical and sustainable. So that is in theory. How does it all work in practice? This is what we're going to find out. Thanks to the contributions of our high-level experts invited to give their input in this webinar today. We are going to be asking our speakers to precisely help us understand how can we plan and design on-farm trials using participatory action research that best serve the farmers' needs. How can farmers be trained to design, to run those trials themselves and validate findings data? So we're actually elevating the farmer at the level of the scientist. Maybe my expert contributors will find the truths of this terminology or want to discuss it. Which approaches can we use to scale up successful practices in farmer-to-farmer knowledge exchanges? And what are concrete examples of how these methods and findings have been used in practice and throughout policy? So this is what we're going to be touching on today. And I would like all my esteemed speakers today to please switch on their cameras while I give their names. And as I give your name, put on your camera and wave so that we can see you. And I will obviously introduce you more precisely as we invite you to speak. We have today in our panel, Dr. Angela Mkindi, who will be telling us about botanical plant uses and the role of researchers and farmers in Tanzania. We have Dr. Witness Kozanayi, who will be telling us about the use of PAR, Participatory Action Research, after Idai hit Zimbabwe. Then we will be hearing from Ferdinand Wafula, who you can see there, surrounded by the farmers he works closely with. He will be telling us through the farmer testimonials how trial design has been operating in Kenya and how he's been harnessing and using those findings. And then we will be hearing from Dr. Maria Goss, who's joining us from Zimbabwe, who will be telling us about how on-farm trials have influenced Zimbabwe's agroecological policy. So a warm welcome to our panelists. Thank you very much to Afsa and Sky for organizing his series for us. I can see there's a bit of activity in the chat with people telling us where they're from. So Charles, if we can drop the COBA toolbox link here to also ask people to rather give a bit of background about themselves via the COBA toolbox. We prefer that as a kind of confirm attendance tool. You'll see that going to the chat box. And then setting perhaps the stage for our speakers is to understand more who our audience is. Okay, we have 46 people registered as participants. Charles, I'm going to ask you to put up the first poll that we designed for today. And we're going to be asking people to please tell us which category of stakeholders, how to speak, they belong to. Are you a farmer, a researcher, a trainer, a member of an NGO, CSO, from the private sector? Or do you have from an international organization? Do you represent government? Are you a donor? Are you perhaps just not involved in the sector? Forget about CDA, just in the sector related to PR research. This will give us a sense of who's in the room. Can you see on your side how many people have responded yet, Charles?
Yeah, it's 19 out of, it's 21 out of 44. So we are getting close to half.
Okay. If people can please be encouraged to quickly tick which category of stakeholders they fit in, and then we can go ahead with our proceedings. I'm going to so long ask you, Angela, to please get ready to share your screen. And Charles, I think we should just stop the poll and just share the results so that Angela also as a speaker knows who's in the room.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I can't see the results. Yes, there we go. So 22% of the people in the room are farmers. 90% are researchers. How interesting, because this webinar is actually about how do farmers and researchers work together. So these are the right people in the room. We've got some trainers and some members of NGOs and ROs. Thank you very much. Close this window. And then I'm going to briefly introduce Angela while Angela, you start sharing your screen. Okay. Angela Mkindi is a researcher in ecological pest management, specifically emphasizing emphasizing pests. Sorry, my screen got kicked off here. Natural pest regulation, ecosystem services, and the utilization of botanical pesticides. Her expertise lies in conducting collaborative research and implementing interventions that involve multiple stakeholders. Angela has authored and published several research articles on the use of pesticidal plants. Furthermore, she has contributed to successfully leading projects focused on sustainable pest management and farmer-centered research, addressing both above and below ground pest challenges in smallholder farming systems. So, Angela, today you will be sharing the content of a paper you wrote on pesticidal plant usage, highlighting the roles of researchers and farmers in driving this research in Tanzania. We are all ears.
Thank you very much, and I do hope you see my screen.
Yes.
Yes, it's all perfect.
Thank you very much. So thank you, Sasha. Thanks, Afsa, for...
Mothership, were you talking to me?
Excuse me. Sasha, you were saying something?
Regarde dans ta chambre, à côté de toi, tu avais fait la relecture du cours. Donc, tu y seras à côté de ton lit, je pense.
She forgot to mute herself.
Shasha,
Okay.
okay, I'm going to mute Shasha. No worry. Let me just open
I'm
that.
happy to...
Yeah, so go ahead, Angela.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much, Charles, and all the organizers, and I'm really privileged and happy to be part of this webinar. My name is Angela Mkindi, as introduced, from the Nelson Mandela African Institution of Science and Technology, and I am happy to share with you experiences from Tanzania on ecological pest management and the role of researchers and farmer engagement. So right away, I will talk to you about the process itself. So in ecological pest management and in agroecological participatory actions that we do, the main focus is to really understand how we do things together. So from how we look at the problem, how we collaboratively understand the problem, how we organize ourselves into experimenting and looking for best options, how we act and how our actions influence the community and all stakeholders involved, and the lessons that we gather. So our problem is pest management and pests themselves. We know we have apparent knowledge about pests and their damage and how that influence food systems. But we have also another challenge of pest management itself. We know that for some times now we've had lots of debates around negative impacts of chemical pesticides and the need for alternative pest management options. So this is one key thing that our actions starts with, to understand what our issues are so that we know how best we devise options for solutions. And our principles are centered into the interactions between a farmer and a researcher, and also, of course, and the stakeholders, but how best we make networks amongst the parties. And so on a farmer, as a component of the principle, is that farmers are actually at the center of the process, because that's where challenges emanate. That's where the focus need to be, and that's where actually actions need to start with. And the research has to really respond to key problems that are really affecting real life situations. And also afterwards, we need to have ways of exchanging knowledge, practices, ways to receive and share feedbacks, and also learning from each other. In the action, our actions are centered on the values of honoring the ecosystems, the communities, and the environments that we are working in. I know agroecology principles and efforts are centered on specificity. They have to be context specific, answering to real questions at a certain point in time, but at some point be reproducible. So co-creating this knowledge and options together helps to bring that context specificity option, but also with valuing the culture and traditions and values, because what we need here is pest management, but also its sustainability. So this is achieved through a farmer research network framework that I think Sasha has mentioned. And after we have really learned, to have experimented, we understand, we've seen results, it's time that we learn. We see what these things entail, see what have gone well, what have not gone well, what we need to carry through to the next phase of the research cycle. But before doing that, clarity is quite very important. So for example, we have, since long time in history, we have had pest management options, such as using natural substances, using ashes, using plant materials, using some other substances here and there, but also manipulating the ecosystem to just make the insect pressure low. So what is important for us is seeing those practices, which are very important to our ecosystems, and see how we optimize them for the betterment of pest management, but also seeing rules and guidances around the options. Because what we need here is research. What we need is something that is reproducible. So what are the rules that we can adopt amongst ourselves? We take an example of botanicals. How best do we harvest? How best do we prepare? How best do we apply? Or how do we store them? These are things that need to be communicated and understood very well. But when we also go to application, for example, how do we measure efficacy? How do we measure our success? Then what parameters can tell us, what indicators tell us that we are successful or we have a challenge that we need to rectify? Things such as yield, damage, about natural enemies, such as about pests themselves. Because here the point is, for us, ecological pest and disease management is not only focusing on eradicating pests, it's all activities that entail suppressing pressure of the insects or of the pathogens, and yet sustainable enough for humans and for the ecosystem. So understanding also ecosystem services that are there for pest management, roles of natural pest regulation. Sometimes it won't be applying substances as the only option, but it may be on manipulating the ecosystem to help it just self-regulate, but also multiple impacts of options. Some options have multiple impacts, such as soil health management, pest management, climate change, and things like that, so that we appreciate the role of the ecosystem in pest management and other attributes. So this one slide is actually how we talk about pest management versus other natural pest regulation options, and also other ecosystem services in farmlands. For example,
Okay, Angela, just to let you know, you have 4 minutes left.
Exactly. Thank you very much. So we talk about insects and their role in the ecosystem and how that helps to suppress insect pests. And on the farmer engagement, what we take care is, first of all, understanding the role of beneficial pests, how we do do's and don'ts of using plants and other options, but also how we do experiments. So having treated versus untreated plots, and how we manage replications, how we manage demo or individual plots, how we evaluate, and how we get results. So some results are measured from the field, some are feelings from farmers, and we are very happy to tell you that there are some results that are actually beyond the experimentation, such as how farmers feel, how farmers expand from the experiments, but also the confidence that is built amongst the farmers in terms of their capacity to share knowledge and their capacity to learn from others, and their wish also to commercialize and to domesticate some options. And also how the experiments can be reproducible or can be scaled, like used in one area and also replicated in different areas. For example, here we have an example of experiments done in Tanzania, but also reproduced and tried in Kenya to verify things such as chemistry, such as role of botanicals on plant growth, but also commercialization. And also reproducibility in terms of scientific community, that some evidences that we get can actually be peer reviewed and be presented in the scientific community for use in a wider perspectives. And we embrace 10 elements of agroecology, and we arrange them in a way that we see how botanical pesticide can have an entry point in farmer research network, all the way into responsible governance. When we have enough evidences, we have a number of people understanding what we do, so as to make a report to policy makers and the other authorities or stakeholders. This is just the 2 last slides on what we do that conform to the 10 elements of agroecology, such as resilience, where farmers can have their own ways of preparing, their own ways of using it, their own way of commercializing it, and so become less dependent on external inputs or another pressures that can suppress them. So they can have social economic resilience, but also having green mulch, having botanicals as green mulch to improve soils, at the same time managing pests. And here is another slide about how best learn together on how to prepare and use botanicals. This is something also that builds confidence on how we can remain resilient in using things that you own. And lastly, the commercialization aspects, that at least farmers can commercialize a number of things out of the experimentations that are done and out of the insights that are formed, are developed, such as selling products themselves and selling crops that are produced ecologically. So this is actually the last example of showing farmers selling, actually having clients and customers very trusting, so that they feel it is a safe place, and also they can easily get products that are safe out of their neighbors' farms. So all these are evidences to show that it's actually feasible to have participatory trials and experiments, and these are very informative, and they inspire things just beyond the experiments themselves or the trials themselves. I thank you very much, and I hope to interact with you more on the Q&A and other discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Angela, for this lovely input, because you've really provided us with a very nice foundational framework, you know, unpacking the PRA principle linked to the 10 agroecological principles through the lens of pesticidal plants. So thank you for achieving a lot in a short amount of time. There is, I think, one little question already in the Q&A for your attention from Samuel Nyanzi. So if you want to perhaps reply to this, and so long, I'm going to be asking our next speaker to get ready. We will come back so that people know to all our speakers in the end. We're first going to get everybody's input. You can drop a question in the Q&A at any time, and then we will allow for a more open discussion in the end. So Witness, yeah, do you want to go ahead with screen sharing, and I will be briefly introducing you so long. Please go away.
Okay.
So Witness Kozanayi is a researcher cum development expert with over 20 years experience in consulting and research in the field of agriculture, natural resources management, and rural livelihoods in Southern Africa. Much of his work was carried out in Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, and South Africa. His specific interest lies in the interface between the traditional knowledge system and Western science, and how the two affect rural livelihoods and governance of natural resources. He is particularly interested in decolonizing methods such as participatory action research, which he has used in many projects, including in the Seed and Knowledge Initiative, SKY. In SKY, his brief has been to promote farmer-led research using the PAR approach. Other than that, Dr. Witness Kozanayi is a lecturer at the Morondera University of Agricultural Science and Technology in Zimbabwe, and he has a PhD in Environmental and Geographical Sciences from UCT in South Africa. So, Dr. Kozanayi, we are very excited about your presentation. The mic is yours and you have 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Sasha. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the party, as it were. I need not reintroduce myself, but let me get down to business of the day. Sorry, is my slide showing on the whole screen, or because I seem not to see the?
You need to maximize the diapo bottom right.
Bottom right.
Go down, 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 and you will see the little yes,
okay,
there.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it was playing hide and seek with me. Okay, so welcome to my presentation. Like Sasha said, I'm part of the SKI program, and ideally I would have spoken about the participatory action research that I'm doing with the SKI. But I thought maybe for a difference, let me talk about how we share my experiences with the use of participatory action research in the aftermath of Cyclone Idai. For those of you who may have missed it, Cyclone Idai hit Zimbabwe and Southern Africa, eastern part of Southern Africa, 2019, and it caused the 2020, it caused the massive destruction. So we went in and tried to use the participatory action research to get stock of what had happened. So basically, that's what my talk is going to be on. So maybe just to show you, to give an impression of the context, not to relive, said memories that you can see there, but in a a clockwise format. What you see there, top left, is what used to be a settlement, carpeted by landslide during the cyclone. Then top right, cars that were swept by floods and heaped somewhere, someone looking at the cars hopelessly, as you can see. Bottom left, what was once a field, and that's what remains there. Center bottom, a bridge swept away too soon before help could reach the people that were affected by the cyclone, or before people that were affected by the cyclone could move to safety. Bottom right, what remained of what was once a house and a homestead. So just to show you an impression of what happened, what the destruction that was caused by Cyclone Idai. And maybe just to give you further context in terms of what the situation was like before Cyclone Idai hit the Chimanimani, the site for my study for this work. Before Cyclone Idai hit, there had been efforts to promote agroecological practices. which I'm sure because of where we're coming from, we all know. But basically, it's about integrated production and use of systems and networks with mixed farming. And then part of agroecology talks about solidarity networks. I give this context because this is important. I'm going to come back to this. Then there was also conventional farming, monocropping crops and production of crops, monocrops and timber, commercial timber in this area. Then, of course, there was the land tillage that was happening. And so in terms of food destruction, a lot was lost, human life. It was the worst, Cyclone Idai was the worst cyclone in living memory to hit Zimbabwe and Southern Africa at large. It hit Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. So after Cyclone Idai hit the area, hit Chimanimani, eastern part of Zimbabwe, Tsuro, a local NGO, which is part of the SKI family, came up with a program where they mobilized a number of organizations, institutions to go into the affected area for purposes of analyzing the impact of Cyclone Idai by way of identifying multiple causes of the disaster and also recommending options for mitigation, adoption, and emergency response in case of potential recurring tropical cyclones of a similar nature. So as you can imagine, or as you saw on those photos, the impact was multidimensional. It affected different facets of life. And to understand, the impact, you really needed a diversity of, people from different backgrounds. So, but how are you going to do this? And I was fortunate to be part of this team that went into the area soon after the cyclone. And I was part of a team that was looking at agroecology. So as a team, I want to just, reflecting, I think what we did was to say, we were guided by, I think, now with the benefit of hindsight, I want to share with you a quote by Chinua Achebe. He was an African author who said, until lions have their own historians, the story of the hand will always glorify man. So going to Chimanimani, we said, until we change the way we do things as an agroecological, pack of researchers, we will tell our own stories and miss out on the other people's stories. So we needed to give, the hunters, the lions who happen to be the local people, the platform to tell their own story. So that's just to, yeah. And okay, why is it not moving?
No, it's moving. You are on research objectives.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I think
now I want to go to the next one. I want to go to the next slide. Oh, okay, there we are. So we were seized with the question of how are we going to carry out the research to understand, all the, the different facets of the impact. And of course, like I said, there were multiple organizations and individuals involved. More than 10 universities from Africa and from Europe were involved, research organizations, local NGOs, but we were grouped into multiple themes, 6 thematic and, themes, looking at different aspects. Like I said, I was part of the group that was looking at agroecology. And because of differences in disciplines, there were different approaches that were at our disposal. On the right there, I am trying to over-dramatize, what was going on is we are trying to come up with the right approaches to use. There's a bus there that with many passengers, each one wanting to go different directions or wanting to stop because they've reached their destination. So that was what was happening in the background. Then our agroecological team said, okay, for us to do this work, we need to use participatory action and research, which by way of definition, I know you are familiar with this, but just to re-emphasize, it's a form of knowledge construction that is rooted in farmers' experiences and lives. It celebrates local knowledges. It celebrates other knowledges other than Western science-based knowledges. It's meant to shift the power hierarchies in research, so much so that farmers who are traditionally viewed as subjects of research can also take a front seat and lead the research process. So that's power for you, and that's what we are going to use. So in the next slides, I'm going to explain explain to you the steps that we took to do, when we're doing PAR. These are steps that I have now adopted and seem to be using, in other work that I'm doing when we're doing using participatory action research. First of all was to reach out to farmers. who had been affected by the cyclone, and bring them on board in terms of doing the research. And once we had these farmers on board, we had to explain to them the orthodox research process, what we usually do when we carry out research, and also highlight the weaknesses of that form of research and provide PAR as an alternative. Then, of course, there was a lot of excitement among the farmers to say, okay, we want to participate. So we selected the local people who could then work as co-researchers. And I need to emphasize that we needed to get a good mix. And good mix, I mean, we needed to get youth, we needed to get women, we needed to get young people, and old people as well. We needed to engage different people to come on board as the co-researchers, because each one, of course, brought in different nuances and expertise. Then the next step was to level the playing ground. And by leveling the playing ground, there are two activities that we did there. First of all, it was to train local farmers in elements of research. And remember, this is something that they have not done before. So it took a bit of time. And by this, we talked about, giving an overview of the research process, research tools, data collection, and analysis. Pretty much the four-step cycle that Angela spoke about in her presentation. So we walked the farmers through these steps. And then also it was to train researchers on how to work with farmers. Suddenly research, we had strange bedfellows, researchers working with farmers, not as subjects, but as as co-researchers, and farmers working with researchers, not as all-knowing experts, but as co-researchers. So it involved the building capacity on both the side of the farmers and also the side of the researchers. Then number 5, it was then to generate. Hello.
Can we ask you to conclude in? You've got 2 minutes left, okay?
That's fine. I'm almost there. So the next step was to generate research questions and approaches with the active participation of the local farmers. Then, of course, the next step, data collection and analysis, interpretation. Again, this was done pretty much with the farmers leading the process. And then a critical step that was also observed was validation of findings during report back meetings to create ownership and build confidence among the communities that were affected by the cyclone, and also the farmers that were involved in the research. Then lastly, there was dissemination of the results. And like Angela, different platforms were used, journal publications, radio stations, meetings and what have you. So there I'm showing photos of farmers, local farmers as co-researchers, doing the actual work in the field, digging infiltration pits, taking field assessments of grasses and what have you. So just to give you some observations, some conclusions from the work that we did. The first thing, of course, is that locals successfully carried out the research and fed back their findings to their communities. Farmers, so this helps to dispel the rumor that the myth that farmers, cannot do research. We have empirical evidence here that farmers can actually do the work. Farmers were open to research on issues that researchers did that on. When we went in, people were still grieving. Some had lost their relatives, and we were trying, as researchers, we were trying to, to dodge around, not to engage with these sensitive issues. But the farmer said, no, let's open these issues. Let's discuss them. Let's research on these issues. And then the pilot generated a lot of interest. And among farmers and other people that were involved. And I personally got more confident to use PAR. And maybe as a key finding from this work, elements, because we are trying to compare when we did this work, we are trying to compare the effectiveness or the resilience of agroecologically farmed lands versus those that are conventionally farmed. So that was the genesis of what we are trying to do. And as we're finding, we noted that elements of landscape agroecology practiced before the disaster pointed the way towards a more resilient agrarian future in Chimanimani district. Agroecologically farmed lands were more resilient than conventionally farmed lands. We can have a discussion on that later on. But let me also hasten to say, doing participatory action and research, the way I've explained, is not a park, you walk in the park. It involves a lot of things: patience, time, tolerance, and changing power dynamics. Those that used to enjoy the privilege of standing before farmers and lecturing them on how to do research suddenly have to lose that privilege and come down from their pedestal of power and listen to farmers as co-researchers. And that's not easy. It's more complex than I'm dramatizing here. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, in short, that's my story about how we used the participatory action research in Chimanimani after Cyclone Idai affected the area. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Witness. And that last photo you're sharing is absolutely scary, showing the magnitude of the phenomenon. And I'm sure it was a very emotional process. I think, this type of fundamental research, it is not dissociated from the high emotional involvement and the livelihoods that are tied into it. So thank you for honing on that point. We are dealing with personal journeys when we do such participatory research.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I think if you want to have a look, Witness, at the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, see if perhaps you want to answer the last question that was posed there, and we can come back to it in the plenary.
Okay,
so thank
question
you.
and answer.
Yeah, you go to the Q&A and see if you can answer any of the questions there. Then I would like, with no further ado, to move to our third speaker for today, who is actually not on his own. We've got Ferdinand Wafula, one of the stalwarts of the healthy food, healthy food centers. He will be moderating a discussion with a group of his own farmers, bringing forth direct testimonies on the trial design that they've been doing in Kenya. So Ferdinand, you will be setting up the stage and inviting people to speak. Thank you so much for setting this up in this fashion. And while you get ready, I just want to briefly introduce you. So Ferdinand Wafula has over 15 years in the agroecological sector, been working on biogardening innovations with his BioGhi entity in Western Kenya. As director, he has transformed BioGhi into a key center for the Healthy Soil, Healthy Food initiative in collaboration with AFSA. Ferdinand has, as the trainer, developed educational programs for farmers and extension facilitators, and he has been promoting the use of bio-inputs in sustainable farming. Ferdinand, we know that you are passionate about farmer-led experiments, seed systems, whole farm designs, and soil fertility management. So thank you very much for bringing these people together today. We can't wait to hear from the farmers how this process has been for them. Over to you.
Thank you, Sasha. And just want to share my screen and welcome everybody. It's a chilly morning in Western Kenya, and we are happy to have farmers here with us during this webinar to share some our perspective as citizen scientists. So we'd just like to greet you, everybody, and welcome to our story. The focus of our presentation is the purpose of our engagement as citizen scientists in a participatory manner with farmers in doing trials, and how our intervention process has been, also the results of what we've been doing and some of the achievements, and our recommendation for further interventions. We are also part of the community of practice, and we are inspired to encourage and strengthen adoption of new and promising practices in the soil fertility management. And we've been looking at how we can fill the gaps of producing quality bio inputs, and also using biofertilizer trainings, enabling farmers to learn, and not just learning, but learning for change. And by doing this, looking at these gaps in terms of existing soil health practices, what are the range what are those that are available, and what is it that we can adapt to our own situation. And by so doing, building confidence from practice among trainers and practitioners, because we say you cannot be a good farmer if you are not also a practicing farmer. And agroecology has got that component of science, has also got that component of practice. So we combining this, and this is actually what we are sharing here. We have had the opportunity to share with farmers some of the terms that are used in research, and defining this in very simpler terms that farmers can be able to understand. When we talk about replications, meaning a repetition of trial plots, and the treatments, these are the applications. Observations, these are the effects and the changes that are taking place as a result of treatments. And when we're talking about the recordings and even the analysis, now farmers also learn what is it that they need to observe, what is it that they can record. And all these forms part of the processes that we have used. When we're doing the training and the trial setups, this is a very simple tool that we used in doing the recordings, so that we have the period or the dates, and on a weekly basis, we were expecting some of these inputs that we were using, farmers can be able to record. So we had beds, and we had the treatments here, and the treatments here, because we were focusing on soil health, we had prior training on bokashi making, for instance, biostimulant making, and farmers had their own manures and their own seeds and their own local different types of manures. So we wanted to test some of the new inputs that we were learning, so that we can have more confidence even in extending, and so that even farmers who are training other farmers can have more confidence when they are extending the knowledge to others. And so this was being done on a weekly basis, and then farmers were to give their names there, and then these are the trial plots. They were replicated, and some of the farmers had 12, a minimum of 12. There are farmers who also had their own, others who had their other inputs and wanted to try and also compare with what we had set. So we were not limited to just having this set. And I'm just showing some of what we did on beans, a bed with the bokashi, a bed without anything, and a bed with the biostimulants. And the photographs just show some of the differences that you can see, that maybe one without any treatment, we were calling that zero. And we adopted an ABC kind of learning, so that absent A represents absent, B for bokashi, and C for compost when we were starting. And later we added the solid biostimulants also, so that we had four different types of treatments. Then some of the observations and even results is that the pod formation in some of the trials became different. Some were very long, some were very big, and even the harvests from the beans, some of them we could compare that from a plot of 1.5 meter by 1.5 meter, we also weighed, and this also formed part of our results and part of the recordings that we had. And on maize, we did maize, and why we chose on maize, and this was an open pollinated variety, because we thought it's important to start where the farmers are and what they like before you can be able to transform and incorporate other elements. And in this region, farmers grow a lot of maize and beans, and that is part of their livelihood. So before we could get into other crops, testing other crops. This was our starting point. And we're using here the open pollinated varieties so that farmers were able to take measurements, because they could observe that the leaf size for some of the treatments like bokashi was growing big and larger. So by what extent? And for us, that was interesting. And also taking measurements of the cob size and even the length of the stalk. That was of interest, because these are some of the changes that were showing some differences. And even with the beans, we noticed.
I'm so sorry to break your flow. I just want to let you know you've got less than 2 minutes left, so just for time management and to hear your farmers as well.
Thank you. Yeah, so these are some of the differences that were being noted. That for the treatments that we had 0, for example, you would get like 3 cobs. 3 beans, 3 seeds. And then those that had the other biostimulants and bokashi, you would get like 5 or even 6. So these differences made a very big difference in terms of our learnings. So even for the different farmers that we were working, we did the analysis, and some of these results is actually what they are also sharing with us here today, in terms of what was their feeling getting involved in these trials, and especially on soil fertility management using the organic or agroecology inputs. These were also some of the very, very recent findings that we are making to analyze, so that we can analyze even the formation of the cobs from inside, so that we have underdeveloped cobs, we have half developed cobs and full cobs, so that counting from a given plot, how many maize stalks actually have fully developed, how many have half developed, and then putting that into percentages, that gives us some information, useful information on how the bio inputs that we are using is impacting on the health of the soil. I will allow some of the farmers that we did these trials with to share their perspective, and then we will also get to the lessons.
Okay, my name is Felix Omolonji. I'm a farmer working in biology. I also took part in the trials, and this is what I noted. Yeah, the biofertilizers improve the quality of soil. Yeah, the crops that I planted was strong and very healthy. Yeah, and also the crops were able to withstand the challenges of weather. Yeah, and also the biostimulants are eco-friendly, whereby we had some insects helping me control the other harmful pests.
Sorry, Ferdinand, we lost the camera. It would be nice to see who's speaking. I don't know if you can reactivate.
Yes.
Yeah, so I realized the quality of the soil improved compared to whatever I used to use before I got the knowledge of biofertilizers. And that's why I conclude by saying biofertilizers or bioinputs is a solution to poor soils. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We also have another one here. So her main point here is about actually the quality of the biofertilizer on her soil. So yeah.
Kwa majina ni Violet Nanga. Mimi ni mkulima wa biology, sauti juu. Baada ya kufanya ukulima, nilifanya trial ya maharagwe. Baadaye niliona mchanga iliweza kubadilika. Nikaona ya kwamba mahali ambapo nilikuwa nimepanda paziro palibadilika. Saizi ninapopanda mahali pale unapata maharagwe, chakula iko pale mzuri, mahindi, hata mboga imeweza kubadilika. Kwa hivyo nashukuru wakati nilimaliza kufanya trial mchanga ilibadilika.
So she's saying even the trial showed that her soil fertility was very low, and after she adopted the use of the biofertilizers, even in places where she didn't put anything, now she's putting some biofertilizer, and she's noted quite significant difference. And now she's adopting, expanding that just within her own farm garden. Okay.
Kwa majina naitwa Esther Degidi. I'm a farmer through biology. Nilifanya trial, nikafanya zero, nikafanya biostimulant na bokashi na compost. Na hizo zilifanya vizuri sana. Hata vile nilijifunza nikaenda nikafanya kwa trial zangu, hiyo vitu zangu vilifanya vizuri sana kwa sababu nilikuwa na spray, biostimulant, liquid biofertilizer. Hizo zikafanya vizuri sana. Na vile kwa area yenye ninatoka, nilikuwa na group huko nikawafundisha, na wakachukua hiyo mafundisho, hata wakaenda wakafanya kwa trials. Tena community walikuwa wanaenda kuendelea na kufanya hizo trial kwao, na walivuna mahindi vizuri sana na wakaona maharagwe vizuri sana.
Yeah, from her perspective, she the trials that she did attracted others in the community, and she was able to share with them and also train them, members of a group that she has, and it performed well, and so they have a conversation around the practices that we did the trials together with. And last but not least,
my names are Stephen Simon. I'm a farmer. I work with biogardening innovation. And I used seed pelleting. Through the use of seed pelleting, I realized that all the crops that I pelleted were 100% germination was found. Thank you.
Okay, that is one of the practices also that farmers were also doing on seed pelleting. And I think for those who understand the English, he also realized that germination rates and the percentages increase with the pelleting. So that is what we have from the farmers. Hello, Sasha.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Thank you very much, Ferdinand. You know what would be so nice if people in the Q&A want to extend any questions directly to the farmers, we can totally also invite them to do that. You know, the various experiences shared on incremental yields, better germination rate. By all means, you know, fire your questions straight to Ferdinand or to the farmers. Thank you for this very nice interactive session. Thank you very much for the farmers who have joined the session and sharing your testimonies. This was very valuable. Let us move forward to receive the input from our last but not the least speaker. I think you want to stop sharing screen, Ferdinand, so that we can make space for Maria. Dr. Maria Goss is going to be helping us rounding off this discussion, moving us into the policy space. And in doing so, Dr. Maria Goss will be actually telling us about on-farm trials and how these have influenced Zimbabwe's agroecology policy. So this is, you know, direct findings emerging from on-farm trials and how these shape policy. I just want to say a few words about you, Maria, sorry, before you start. So Maria Goss boasts over 2 decades working experience in the Zimbabwean agricultural sector. Maria's journey began as a high school agricultural teacher in Moshonaland. She later became a horticulture lecturer, farmer trainer, and researcher at the University of Zimbabwe. Previously, Maria was agricultural systems and innovation lead for Practical Action Southern Africa and country director for the CNFA's Farmers to Farmer program. She currently today serves as the National Program Director for Sustainable Agriculture, Livelihoods and Technology, known under the SALT acronym. This initiative bolsters agricultural resilience in Zimbabwe amidst climate change challenges. Maria holds a PhD in crop and environmental science from the University of KZN in South Africa, and she ardently advocates for agroecology, biodiversity conservation, and champions sustainable food systems. Maria, you are so welcome. The floor is yours. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sasha. So I'm going to be talking about how the practices, let me first of all thank everyone for joining us. And I'm not sure why my video is not coming through, but let me just go straight into what we are going to be talking about. So I'll be bringing some insights in terms of how all the agroecological on-farm trials and the participation of a diversity of organizations from the government, civil society organization and research institutions did manage to influence policy formulation in Zimbabwe. Please go to the next slide. So the main issue of the National Agriculture Policy Framework, it's looking at resilient and sustainable agriculture, which is just hinged on agroecology and climate adaptation. And the main goal of that particular pillar, because the National Agriculture Policy Framework is comprised of 9 pillars, and each pillar is focusing on a particular trend, a particular key thematic area in the sector, and addressing those issues. So Pillar 8 was looking at resilient and sustainable agriculture with the main aim of increasing climate adaptation and also enhancing agroecology uptake throughout the farmers. The next slide, please. So the way this was done was we went out and worked with a diversity of farmers, and these farmers had started already demonstrating a lot of different elements of agroecology, looking at conservation agriculture, the different strategies and approaches, rainwater harvesting, and then the key highlights which came up is the Pfumvudza, which ended up being a presidential scheme from 2021. So the Pfumvudza, before it became a presidential scheme and was taken up under the Ministry of Agriculture, there were a diversity of civil society organizations and researchers who were working with farmers, and the farmers were now demonstrating, and this took years and about over 3 seasons, demonstrating agroecology, even demonstrating what we call the Pfumvudza, most people know as the potholing approach, where a pothole is constructed. There's a lot of mulch, there's also living mulch, there's also dry mulch, a lot of organic matter and infiltration pits. And then we also were demonstrating farmer managed seed systems, where we established a number of community seed banks. And during the COVID-19, it came out that community seed banks, most farmers were not able to access them because of the lockdown. So after the COVID and during the COVID, using virtual, options, we came up with home seed libraries to enhance and to make sure that most of the farmers had access to the seeds. And then there are also farmer field schools, which are being led by FAO Zimbabwe under their biodiversity project. Move to the next slide, please. And under the farmer seed, there's a project technical unit, which is comprised of a number of representatives from the sector, financial, research, academia, civil society, and the public mainline ministries like Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Agriculture. So the farmer field demonstration sites, there was a lot of information, and we started off by gathering the data. And after the data was gathered, and during the demonstrations, we'll then engage with policymakers and go down to the field with them for them to see that agroecology policies, practices, example, community seed banks, conservation agriculture, holistic landscape and livestock management styles and stuff like that are actually working. So policymakers needed to see the evidence, and working across a diversity and including all the key stakeholders, we managed to bring down the policymakers, took them to the field, they engaged with the farmers, they also saw for themselves the things which are on the ground. And we also then went on and developed or formed what is known as the Agroecology Community of Practice. And this is was formally launched in 2019, and it also further brought all the agroecology practitioners and farmers together and farmer representatives, so that eventually it was launched in 2021 as Zimbabwe Alliance for the Promotion and Practice of Agroecology. And this ZAPA sits under the umbrella of the Ministry of Agriculture, and it remains a very strategic forum. And we continued engaging with the policymakers and stakeholders. The next slide, please. And how we did the influencing process is that we first of all took policymakers across the projects, across the sites where agroecology was being practiced, and demonstrations were there. And then after that process was done, we went further into advocacy. That's when we started going down to the provinces. Zimbabwe has got 8 or 10 provinces, and we went to 6 of those provinces, talking, sensitizing and raising awareness with executive directors, with the farmers, with traditional leadership in each of the provinces. Would go into 2 districts, and from those 2 districts we would be given wards where we could go into 2 wards, and then brought dialogue forums and had dialogues with 6 different farmer groups in each of the wards. So from that, we also further validated what they knew about agroecology, what they were also doing in terms of agroecology, and also what they wished to see as being part of the agroecology and organic farming policy. We then further went down from the situational analysis. We then developed position papers, which led to still engaging with the strategic business and policy department under the Ministry of Agriculture. We then further went on and did position papers, presented them to the relevant ministries, Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Environment. And then from there, we had write shops with representatives from the farmers, from the civil organization, from government itself. And this one now led to the development of the draft agroecology policy. Currently, the agroecology policy is being reviewed, and we are now bringing in a biodiversity strategy as well, because there's no way we can talk about agroecology without also referring to biodiversity. Please go to the next slide.
We have 2 minutes left, Maria.
Okay, thank you. And from there, these are just examples of how Pillar 8 worked. We broke the processes and what needed to be done into thematic groups. And we realized that there's need for a strategic planning and facilitation group, and they needed support. From there, we had a lot of multi-stakeholder dialogue sessions with support from DFID then, which is now FCDO, Dan Church Aid. A lot of support was coming even from FAO. And then we realized that there was need to standardize and bring out the standards and also raise awareness and give correct information in the sector. That's when we came up with 5 or 6 technical manuals looking at each of the different principles which are applied to the Zimbabwean situation. Next slide, please. And still working with farmers and the diverse multi-sector players, we also saw emerging issues in agroecology, and then we also tried to address those. And these we're also looking at the different, for example, we had issues with the African migratory locusts, issues with fall armyworm. So Pillar 8, we felt we needed also to make a difference and also influence how that is going, how they were going to be controlling it from a national level. So we then brought up specialists in that area, an entomologist who developed manuals for that. So I think we have one more slide. We also then went out and developed training of trainers so that extension needed to understand what agroecology is, because there are so many mixed messages which are currently out there in the sector. So that is how we did it. And then validation was done. We did validation reports. We did also write-ups for the technical manuals. And then currently, the draft agroecology and organic farming policy is still under review because there are also issues to do with biodiversity, which are also being included in it. So I think with that, I would welcome any questions. I'm done, Sasha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria, for this very, very interesting input. Yeah, it's been quite a holistic process that's been driven in Zimbabwe. I think for me, directly referring from your inputs, in terms of the participatory research, how would you position, the involvement of the farmers in the demo gardens and the direct influence they had on this process by virtue of the fact that they're piloting the demo gardens all the way escalating to policy? What is the connector for you there? What were tangible examples of how you felt this directly influencing the process?
Okay, thank you, Sasha, for that. Yeah, the direct link came in terms of when we were starting to engage with the policymakers. We were just going as civil society representatives and the farmers union representative. But then the policymakers, oops, sorry, there's a very bad weather this side, apologies. So the policymakers then were insisting that, no, you can't be telling us these things. We need to see the evidence. That's when we came up with a program of going down to, in Mashingo, there's what is known as Shashe Agroecology Village, which is being done and supported by a local-based organization known as ZIMSOF. And they went and saw the rain harvesting structures. They saw the vermicompost. They saw the synergies and the interlinkages which are across the agroecology policies, principles being demonstrated. And then here in Marsh West, we also have farmers who are very good at community seed banks. They've taken it further and they are packaging and selling, and they're earning an income, and there is a local economy which has improved. So before the policymakers could see and agree to the policy itself, they had to go and engage with the farmers on the ground. So the farmers played a very key role in terms of providing the evidence which the policymakers wanted to see. So we went across all the 6 provinces. Initially, we went with the policymakers to meet and engage and see what is on the ground before they gave us the go-ahead to do the situational analysis and the position papers. So the farmers were very key in demonstrating and bringing out the evidence.
Yeah, actually the policymakers wanted to interact directly with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they enlightened policymakers your side to be asking for that.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Sorry, I didn't get. Thank
I was
you.
just saying that your policymakers were very enlightened. It was good for them to be seeing this evidence and wanting to engage.
Yeah.
So I abused my power a little bit here as moderator. I took the mic to ask a direct question. I want to thank you very much, Maria, for your wonderful input. I want to invite you to look at the Q&A box if there's any question popping in for you. Before we go ahead with the open Q&A, I want to ask you, Charles, to please bring up another little poll question that we have that can also ignite discussion. We're always keen to identify the challenges and to see what is the room's feeling about, the prevailing challenges we're up against in terms of implementing the approaches that we're advocating for. So Charles, if you're happy to put up poll number 2, and here it is. We're going to be asking you to look at the poll and to look at the different options that are going to be coming up in response to this question, which, sorry, I've only kept in French here. What is the main reason for the weak participation of farmers in farm trials? The text is in English and in French. Would you say that the main reason behind that is low farmer involvement in research trials? Sorry, would you say, in answer to this question, let me rephrase, that it is because of the top-down approach to extension agricultural systems? Option 2 would be, do you think that the corporate interests are so strong and prevailing that national research centers supersede farmers' interests. The third option is the low interest by higher education in supporting farmer-led research. And the fourth option would be, because it is seen as a low priority, there is limited financial support for research and innovations, and therefore for such farmer trials to be undertaken. Thanks. We're just going to take a few minutes to answer these. So just, everybody's invited to cast their vote in terms of what they feel is the main challenge. It's quite dense, so let's give people one minute or so. And Charles, if you can help me identify who else is in the room representing the HSHF centers, I would like to put them on the spot a little bit and to invite them to comment on the picture that will be emerging from this poll. I know Ferdinand is there, but there might be other people whom I haven't spotted.
Jean-Charles also from Eco Impact in Togo, and Samuel Nyanzi from Rusid, Uganda.
Samuel and Jean-Charles. So Samuel and Jean-Charles, if you are happy to perhaps, share some commentary on what was presented and on the outcome of this poll that we'll be sharing just now. If you can be ready, that would be great. We've got 41% respondents for now. So please.
I'm struggling to vote. Where do I click? Because if I click on these things, it's not responding.
You know what? I think, Witness, because you are in the panel, you've entered the room as a panelist. It might be that you are deprived of the right to vote, which is so unfair. I'm so sorry.
In agroecology, we don't accept this. We deal with solidarity, democracy. But anyway, no offense meant, but that's fine.
We're going to send a manifesto to Zoom, okay? No, we should all be allowed to vote on this. Absolutely agree. But you're welcome to also be one of the respondents to this and to share your views on this, Witness, because, in fact, all our panelists as practitioners would be most welcome to comment on this. Charles, what do you think? It's a bit slow. We've been stagnated on 50% respondents. I think we can end here. Do you agree?
Yeah. Usually it doesn't go beyond 50.
Right, so I'm going to be sharing now. We have 39% of participants saying it's because of the top-down extension agricultural system. And then another prevailing reason is because it's seen as a low priority, with this limited financial support being granted to research and innovations. Third in line is the corporate interests dominating the sector, and then the low interest by higher education and supporting farmer-led research. So, Jean-Charles, Samuel, would you like to open your mic and maybe share your views on this and just your general feedback on this session so far?
Yeah, if Samuel is not able to speak, you could ask Elisha. Elisha also comes from Rusid. You could ask Stuart.
I'm here. Yes, I'm here. When I look, good afternoon, everybody. Even when my question was, when the first speaker was presenting, that are the farmers actually consulted on what topic? Is there a challenge? Is there a challenge which has to be addressed by the research, the participatory farmer research? And I think when you look at this poll, you find out that maybe farmers actually are not participating because maybe even so I would say, farmers should actually be taught how to think through, how to present their pressing problems. And if they are able present their pressing problems, then they could be guided to be able to actually try understanding what is happening, to actually do the critical analysis of the situation, and by so doing, they will be able to come up with actually a solution, because in the first place, what they were looking at was their own need. So I would say when you are looking at participatory farmer research, try to encourage or to empower or to encourage farmers to really identify their problems, not us coming with a problem and then we say, yeah, please research on this. For example, I'll give a very simple example. If farmers are not actually aware of the soil fertility, if they don't even know if they are not having a problem, and then you say, okay, we are going to research and see how this type of fertilizer will improve for soil fertility. Maybe that's not their problem. So I think this one we really need to work very, very strongly on that we empower farmers, first of all, to identify their problems, not even influence. For us, we should not influence them. They should come up with their problem, and I think that will be something. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Samuel. So strongly advocating for like a neutral, non-partisan setting the stage for the farmer to themselves identify what it is, outside of the vested interest of the researchers themselves, I suppose. I think, Angela, you would like to respond to that, perhaps?
Okay, my interest is on just picking up from where the last speaker has ended. And I was actually asking myself, are these farmers' problems? Or are these our problems? So even if we go and empower farmers to really share their problems, are we really having a perception that this is a communal, a mutual problem? I think in my own perspective, in my own practice, actually, even when I go to the field, one thing I am convinced is that this is our own problem. When the food systems are clashing, when we have unsustainable supplies, it affects everyone. So if we have a problem, we have to have it understood by us all, even if we come from different perspectives. We come from the farming perspective, we come from the research perspective. It is our problem. So when this gets into our understanding, it makes it easier for us to really have a good conversation. That is this really important for me? Is this really important for you? If I am a farmer and I say our problem is really pest, is this as important to me as a researcher or to you? And if so, then how do we come together to see if this is an issue, what are our priorities now? What is actually a number one thing that we have to focus on, and so on. Yeah.
Thank you, Angela, for that input, taking a holistic view on who's concerned by the broken food system, actually. I think, Witness, your hand was up. If you want to bounce off what's been said, and I'll speak a bit to the point made by Samuel earlier on, that would be great. And then Ferdinand will be invited to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sasha.
Please activate your camera when you speak. It's always nice to see people.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you, Sasha. I would like to speak to the important issue that Samuel raised. Yeah, I think farmer participation in research is the elephant in the house. We seem not to giving it enough attention, but at the same time, it's very complex. Like I said in my presentation, I think the issue, in addition to what Angela said, it's about dealing with structural issues of framing. How is research framed? Basically, research is framed in binary terms. There is an own research on one hand, and a farmer on the other hand who is always to be consulted at best in terms of getting their views on issues being researched. There is very little. Sometimes in most cases, there is very little consultation of farmers in terms of what the research should focus on. based on the understanding that misconception that farmers don't know. So I think for me, we need to deal with that. And doing that entails training farmers so that they know they have potential to be to be researchers in their own right. Because once they have confidence, once they have that inquisitive mind, they can then be assertive and say, okay, we want you to, when you come to us, this is what we want you to focus on, and not to focus on your predetermined research agendas. Yeah, I think that's it. That's what my contribution would be.
Thank you, Witness. Very, very important to distinguish between the two aspects there. Thank you for that contribution. Ferdinand, you were next.
Yeah, thank you for Mr. Nyazi's question, comment. And I think I'd just like to make a follow-up on that. That there are two issues. We have the community problems, the problems that facing farmers, and priority. What priorities do we have for research? What are the research institutes and academicians taking forward as a priority? And then would be very good to follow up on these citizen scientists, so that what is coming from the community also form part of the larger conversation, big conversation in academic institutions, so that it's from the community to the academic or to the research institutions. Because that, in doing so, then farmers will have more confidence in their own research and in their own findings and in their own practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Ferdinand. Maria, I see your hand is up. Just hold that thought, please. I think Jean-Charles had his hand up earlier. I can't see his hand anymore, but I wanted to give him the opportunity again. Jean-Charles, if you can briefly, please make your input.
Ok. Bonjour et merci.
Bonjour.
Merci pour l'occasion.
Greetings and thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate this presentation. What the colleagues presented, it was really enriching. It allowed us to see how to improve what we're already doing. I really appreciated it. What remains to do is to mobilize, like others said, mobilize farmers, engage them into research activity. I want to thank Ferdinand for bringing together the whole team of farmers with him. Thank you, Jean-Charles. So for you, the question is how to get farmers involved as stakeholders to the research, looking at the right methodology and way. I don't know if the colleagues have a manual to share around this, but I understand you.
Off what's been just said. Maria, I think you will be speaking to this theme as well. Please, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Yes, I wanted maybe to respond to the concerns which are coming out in the question and answer in terms of the policy processes, and also if top-down approach, and if the farmers are really involved, and how do we involve them in the research. So I'll look at it from maybe from an academia and also a civil society point of view. Currently, most of the donors in Zimbabwe, they want to work with consortia, and they are also focused more in terms of inclusion of community-based organizations, because community-based organizations are the ones who represent the farmers on the ground. So I'm really pleased about this trend which is happening in Zimbabwe, that it's not only international organizations who are getting the funding, but they also need to work very closely with community-based organizations. And they want to see, if you pitch, for example, for a bid, the donors now want to see the impact on the farmers. They want also to see the input of the farmers into whatever proposal you're writing. So currently, this is something which is coming out very strongly in Zimbabwe, that farmers' voices need to be heard, and farmers need to be involved in terms of which do they think are the best approaches in terms of addressing their needs, which they face every day, in particular, especially with the climate change impacts. So because for decades, development partners have been there in the communities, but there isn't really much to say about it when the project finishes and then there's no sustainability. So donors in Zimbabwe are becoming more critical in terms of, did you involve the farmers? If you involve the farmers, where's the farmers' input? And looking at it from a research point of view, we also have, we look at, we go down into the communities and listen to what are the actual bottlenecks for the farmers, and working with them in a participatory kind of thing. Before you even start the research, you need to understand what farmers are facing, and then look at how do they think those things can be refined. So it's very important to bring in the indigenous knowledge systems and the indigenous wisdom, which is residing within the farmers themselves, and then you try to integrate with science. So I think this is a trend which is coming out more and more in the Zimbabwean agriculture sector and agroecology context. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maya. I think, you know, your general insights, observing the general trends where funding is going, is definitely pushing towards this greater involvement from the farmers at design. We are at the end of our webinar series. I see there was another hand up, but I think, Charles, correct me if I'm wrong, we do need to release our interpreter, and so that we should aim towards closing this session.
Yep, no, Shasha, we started 5 minutes after, so let's allow Ndolo Kapindu his question. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So Hubert, we would like to hear from you. You will be the last question of this webinar. Over to you. Hubert, vous nous entendez?
Bonjour Sacha, bonjour tout le monde.
Greetings, Sacha, everyone. I'm Hubert Ndolo, president of an NGO platform of farmer organizations in the DRC. I'm really interested by the theme and the involvement of farmers. However, I did not feel what's the position of farmer advisor, because the farmer has its own language. Sometimes it's difficult to adopt when you have agricultural advisors who can use the language because they are living together with the farmers. Maybe I did not really follow. I can hear you. That's a very important question at the end of the webinar. I'm going to ask a couple of experts.
Maybe Witness and Maria, if you have heard Hubert's question about, you know, where's the connecting point with the extension officers? It's all well to talk about a strong farmer involvement, but now in terms of disseminating this knowledge, where's the space for extension officers here? I think it's a relevant question. So your input each in 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Sasha. When we go into the field, the way the Zimbabwean constitution is crafted, you can go and work with farmers directly without going through extension offices at the district and ward level. So everything we do, we work in conjunction and we involve the extension, even from crafting the research, from crafting a response and an initiative and working with the agroecology farmers. There's always an extension officer, and we also then develop training of trainers or training of facilitators guidelines for those, because not many of them are conversant with agroecology principles and elements. So you can't go and work with farmers in Zimbabwe without getting the permission from the agriculture extension services at the ward and district level.
Wonderful.
So,
Maria, sorry to cut you short. Thank you for that. You know, we've got a resource folder on the Google Drive. If you can share those guidelines addressed to the extension officers, it will be a very valuable resource for other people, I think, to share. Witness, can we hear from you on that one?
Yes, I think Maria has said it all, but just to also add that in my talk, in my earlier presentation, I talked about leveling the playing field. It involves even in taking extension officers on board while we are doing training farmers on participatory action research, so that they know that when they look at farmers, they are also co-researchers. So we involve extension officers even when we are training farmers in participatory action research. They're involved throughout the entire agroecological training process and participatory action research process.
Thank you, Witness. Angela, did you want to comment on that? Angela Ferdinand, I would hate not to give you an opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, so the role of extension officers is actually very critical. And in Tanzania, there are efforts to actually directly train extension officers on agroecological practices so that they get to understand before going to practicing it. Because as we know, they have been trained on other conventional practices, and getting them on board needs actually a very thorough trainings for them. So in Tanzania, there is that initiative with agroecology hubs. I know Sokoine and some few NGOs. That typical trainings for them is actually very important.
Right, thank you for that. Ferdinand, any comment on this point? It will be the final contribution.
Very, very, very important. The last 3 days, I have been training government extension workers from 3 counties of Western Kenya in agroecology practices. So the trend is changing. And I think with issues around climate change and even the work that they see, farmers like the ones we are working with here, so they see something that is very different from what they are used to seeing. And then now they are creating demand, and they want to know because they are seeing that it's working. And some of these practices that they were looking down upon are working. So, I mean, there's change. There's a trend that is changing, and that hopefully will enable us get into more in terms of policy space. Thank you.
Thank you, Ferdinand, very much for commenting on that changing trend and how actually they are on the asking end of things. So, Hubert, j'espère que ça a répondu à vos questions. On va demander à Maria s'ils peuvent...
Hubert, we hope your question is answered. We're going to ask for the manual for the technician training to be shared.
Proceed with closing this session. Charles, I don't know if there's someone that we can formally call on to help us close proceedings.
Yes, thank you very much. Gabriel, are you happy to close? Gabriel Manyandazi.
So before we ask Gabriel, I just want to do one last comment on proceedings. I want to thank all the facilitators for their input. The Q&A box is pretty much empty. There's one last question in there, and it would be nice to clear it. If any of our contributors can go there, type an answer. It's nice to honor people's questions. And I'm going to just pause and be quiet now and just share screen showing the next webinar series that we've got lined up for you. We will be seeing you all on the 8th of December to discuss agroecological markets. On vous verra donc le 8 décembre. So thank you very much from my end, and please, Gabriel, over to you to formally close this webinar.
Thank you very much, Sasha, and thank you, Charles. I would like to thank all the presenters for all the great work that they've given, and we would want to urge each and everyone that agroecology is becoming the new reality that can help us as we push towards adaptation to climate change. So I would like to thank everyone who is participating in this, that our trainings in terms of agroecology and all the processes that are involved should not only be the formal practices when we gather people in halls to teach them, or maybe in the fields to have the formal training. But let it also be a demonstration of what we learning through our own lifestyles. I happen to work with faith communities, and in most cases, they would want to see how are we living, so that they can also copy and follow. So let us not only train and talk about it. Let it be a lifestyle for all of us who are here. Even in our homes, in towns, let's have our backyard gardens that reflect the same things that we are talking about, so that we begin to live this and not actually ask others to do it, but that all of us should be involved and should live it and should also share with it informally and formally. Whenever we are having discussions, let us also bring on board the issues of agroecology, so that it becomes something that is alive, something that is a lifestyle. Then we can begin to change the discourse that is in our world, particularly when we're looking at Africa, as well as our different places that are that are disadvantaged. So thanks everyone for this series, and to the members of staff at AFSA, thank you so much for all the great work, and also to the organizers and the different committee members in the working groups. Thank you so much for the great work that you are all doing. We may not be able to meet because during the next webinar, I may not be able to attend. So may I also wish you all the happy holidays for those that are going to be enjoying the holidays. And for all those that will be traveling to COP28, travel safely, and please let agroecology be the subject that is spoken about in every session that we are going to be involved in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. Thank you, everyone. Go well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.